Okay, today's memoirs of Exhibit 9. We're still on Exhibit 9, Part 3. Of course, Exhibit 9 is public information. Show me the money of the constitutions and rule of law against stolen assets still owed to the U.S. Treasury, SEC, and the victims thereof. Now, Exhibit 9 proves beyond a shadow of doubt the RICO economic traders' felony counts, cause and effect counts, and the multitude of the continuous international chain reaction of RICO's now legalized counts. As anyone's international and legalized get out of jail free cards. Now the IPO will publish these so that you can win arbitration, grand juries, no bills, win appeals, pardons, and paroles as a support case. This is protected under the Whistleblower Protection Act of 1989 and Petition Witness Protection Program as the global IPO's full disclosure. Show me the money. The Fair Debt Collection Practice Act of 2010. Deceptive forms. Any person who violates this section shall be liable to the same extent and in the same manner as the debt collector is liable. Now during the Civil War, stolen assets and economic treason was so bad that even if you won the war, you were economically bankrupt from the economic treason. So they had to pass a law, and they called it the Lincoln Law, and it was the False Claims Act that's been revised, and for each and every count committed, it's a $6,000 fine. Then comes the U.S. Racketeering, Influence, and Corruption Organized Act, or RICO, demands that $6,000 plus RICO's tripling is $24,000 for each and every count committed. The government code for attorney conduct, liability for prohibited barter, the penalty is $10,000 plus the False Claims Act of $6,000 times RICO's tripling is $64,000 for each count and for each and every cause and effect counts committed by every attorney. 6% interest times the RICO's tripling is 18% interest. Interest still owed, plus Title 28's inflation adjustments times the RICO's tripling demands is the inflation that's still owed, and of course AI's rule of law discoveries of even more counts and more counts, cause, and effects committed. Now remember, in Exhibit 1 alone, it referred to 478 counts, times the rule of law of 24K is 11.4 million that's still owed to the U.S. Treasury. Attorneys, 480 counts times 64,000 is 30.5 million owed that is still owed. And then remember in Exhibit 2, under likewise the deceptive forms, the unknown account, 60, 41.4 does not match my account numbers within. It names a Cindy Prater who did not sign, or even if she even exists, she can also turn state's evidence against those liable and who still owes the public debt. Show me the money. The Fair Debt Collection Practice Acts of 2010, deceptive forms. Now, the U.S. Constitution in order to form a more perfect union. Section 1 writes, instead of constitutionally protecting victims' rights from the violations of any state, deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of the law, and from the violations to deny any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the law as being stolen assets still owed to the U.S. Treasury, SEC, and the victims thereof. Instead, all three branches of the U.S. government chose to create, inflict, and allow the multitude of felonies within landmark decisions to favor the scams, money laundering, world economic treason as being the Constitution's domestic enemy from within. The U.S. Constitution, Section 3, disqualifications from holding office. Those who have previously taken an oath of office and or profession to support the Constitution. Instead, all three branches of the U.S. government chose to self-inflict themselves as that of being disqualified from holding office and or their profession as an attorney. Landmark decisions as engaged in insurrection or rebellion as given aid and comfort to the enemies thereof, as being stolen assets given to the scams, money laundering schemes, world economic treason, and again, as the Constitution's domestic enemies from within. The U.S. Constitution, Section 4, public debt. Instead of paying the victims for standing up for the Constitution and the public debt still owed to the U.S. Treasury, that in fact is authorized by law, as bounties for services in suppressing insurrection or rebellion shall not be questioned. The Texas Constitution, deductions from salary of public officials for neglect of duty. The legislation shall provide for deduction from the salaries of public officials who may neglect the performance of any duty that may be assigned them by law. Now, this goes all the way back to 1876. And in spite of the constitutions, the rule of law, and the violations of office and or profession, Exhibits 1 through 48 within the Federal Bankruptcy Court, petition within the Supreme Court, and of course the standing trustees reviewed each debtor's petition, reviewed each debtor's claim. Standing trustee was to refer suspected violations of federal criminal law to the appropriate United States attorney. Standing trustee with the knowledge of civil fraud reports to the United States Treasury. Trustee. Now comes the economic traders' world economic treason to close down positive cash flow businesses' food production and close down trading international food exportation thereof. Directly against the food producers, check off international funding and county, state, federal, and international designated funding thereof, as RICO's economic espionage and sabotaging via their international economic anarchy under the Espionage Act of 1917's Title 18. Economic espionage and economic sabotaging includes falsifications of records within bankruptcy, interstate and foreign commerce, false oaths and claims, embezzlement, adverse interest, and conduct of officers, disregard for bankruptcy law, bankruptcy fraud. U.S. attorneys and FBI to address abuse of debt and proven material fraudulent statements in bankruptcy and arson and more. Now, as long as the worldwide T-bill investors go long and support the overprinting of world economies, fiat paper money's inflation, and overtaxation, why would anyone care? Why would anyone care that in fact their nation is being governed beyond the nation's means? It's when the worldwide T-bill investors suddenly go short and or a bet against the world's economy to collect money while the world economies spiral out of control and collapse. It's when the warlords' munition stocks go long and or bet on the usual wars, inhumanities inflicted by politicians' prior negative cash flow choices to collect while their stock values and dividends go up within yet another world war's human sacrificing. It's when investors suddenly go short and bet against the weaker nations' economies to collect money while the weaker nations' women, children, and elderly starve to death. Some things just never change. That's when it hits the fan and suddenly everyone cares and all will be held accountable. Then comes the usual finger pointing, saber rattling, and even more wars in humanity that are inflicted to temporarily prop up yet more self-inflicted failed economies. Unfortunately, in today's nuclear warfare, controlled by the usual economic traders and egotistical psychopaths, this world economic treason will yet again inevitably eliminate and snuff out all the world's established civilizations again. Mankind does not have to live like this, nor does mankind have to die out like this. Intergalactic traders may or may not interfere against the egotistical psychopaths' nuclear annihilation. Either way, intergalactic traders will not trade with mankind universal trading post. For it is obvious mankind's mental instabilities as universal trading partners have not progressed whatsoever. Seriously, as mankind knowingly and continuously repeats a violent world's violent history over and over again. Of course, there's always hope with present and future generations' decisions involving mankind's economic prosperity to increase universal trading and world trading while maintaining world peace. Mankind is very fortunate, for in fact, someone somewhere has something to trade with someone else somewhere else for something